Welcome to Life with Legends. This is Justin Bell. A very cool episode, actually. I was at the Amelia, formerly the Amelia Island Concours in Jacksonville, Florida, just a couple of weeks ago. And Ray Evernham was pretty much one of the features of the weekend because his protege, Jeff Gordon, was the honoree. So I thought, well, how cool. Let's get Ray to sit down and have a chat. I've always wanted to hear how Ray and I met. You actually do need to listen to the podcast because it's slightly embarrassing, but I have to say, this guy is one of my favorite people in motorsport. His new life as a TV host, car collector, consultant to Hendrick Motorsports, founder of the SRX series, and very much in demand as a speaker and host at many of the top car events all around the country, do make Ray a very busy guy. But it's his extraordinary exploits as a crew chief to the rising star that was Jeff Gordon is what makes him so fascinating and legitimate. Together, they won 47 Cup races and 3 Cup championships, which is simply outstanding. I've always wanted to sit Ray down and hear some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, so I hope you really enjoy listening. And the fact that we had to do this recording in my bedroom at the hotel is just a sign of what a cool guy he is. All right, enjoy. I was just thinking, inviting Ray Evernham up to my room. This follows on from us being in a spa.
I know, and I was thinking about that too, but I guess there are worse guys to have rumors about. So,
if I was,
and I say that all the time. Hey, I'm not, but if I was, I would date you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, at least we got that out of the way. But this time I let my girlfriend be in the room. That's a whole different level. Well, we're here at Amelia. We got the Corvette seminar. You're part of this. Is that the only thing you're doing here?
No, I'll actually be doing the Hendrick years with Jeff Gordon, the honoree, on Saturday morning, and we're bringing in Kenny Schrader, who's an incredible storyteller, and Steve Letarte, who a former crew chief, and Jeff and I, and so we'll do that. And you're emceeing the dinner, and I am going to talk to Jeff again. So it's my job to make him cry Saturday night. I don't know. One of us is going to cry. I don't know which one it's going to be. Just so proud to. We have been friends now for 32 years, and he was 19 when we met. So it's to see the progress of him, not only as a incredible race car driver, but as a person. Yeah. It really he's the kid brother everyone wants.
Yeah, has he? We're talking about Jeff Gordon, but has he constantly surprised you through his life? Because just from the young driver to running Hendricks, basically.
I want to say he hasn't because I have so much faith in him, but how he does things that I don't know how fast that he does it. You really want to believe the best in people, and I see what he's done with children's charities specifically and how hard he's worked for so long. He's made a commitment, for years, 25, 30 years to raise this money, and then to watch him just move from position to position and adapt. He went from race driving, which we all knew, God-given talent, right? We all hated him for it, right? But then to move into television, and the people bragged on how great he was at television and how hard he worked. And then now to step in as vice chair for a guy like Rick Hendrick, and he's doing fantastic at it. So I am really proud of him, and I'd love to tell you I'm not surprised, but yeah, I am.
Isn't it crazy? When you move from racing into TV, there's a group of people that go, just stay in your lane. We do TV. Don't fuck up our world, right? And I always said, I never want to be the color guy, because I was the guy who was in the pits, but I kind of was. I wasn't like Calvin Fish supporting Lee Diffie. I was always the guy that went and got the fan stuff and ran around. But I always remember saying, I don't want to be the color guy like Calvin or someone, because the minute the Dale Juniors and the Jeff Gordons and the Jimmy Johnsons decide they want to try their hand at TV, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Because they're so famous and so good. And so I remember when Jeff started doing the TV, I was like, well, how good can he be? Damn it. you know?
Yeah.
It's like, and then it's like you. How good can you be at TV? Oh, shit. They're really good at TV.
Well, I appreciate that, but I enjoy TV like you do, right? So I think that you and I have a lot of the same qualities when it comes to, we just enjoy being around people and hearing the stories. And I think showing that genuine interest is what makes you a good interview and a good interviewee. The fact that you care about the sport, and Jeff knew what he was talking about, and he was fresh out of the car. And let's face it, he's Jeff Gordon. And as Roger Penske said to me one time, the great drivers look out of a much bigger windshield than the other drivers.
Yeah.
So Jeff was talking about things that other people really just didn't see. I think the other drivers would probably VCR it, tape it, whatever, and play it back because he just was just so good at it.
So, yeah, it was like almost holistic. He brought everything together. But tell us what it was like when you first, before we talk about where you sort of started, when he first turned up. What was the first test? When was the first moment you got that glimmer of like, well, this isn't a bad gig?
Well, I'll tell you, the story is really wild how it all happened, but I had just left IROC and was doing some things, had my own shop, and Andy Petrie was a friend of mine who was Harry Gant's crew chief at that time, and he knew that I didn't have a full-time job, that I was trying to go back racing myself, and so he knew I needed the money, right? So, and he said, hey, look, we're going to put together a little deal for this Jeff Gordon kid out of our shop, but we need somebody to head it up, and the Bark Dolls are going to be involved, and a guy named Hugh Connerty, who at that time was Outback Steakhouse and Hooters restaurant. And I said, who's going to drive it? He said, this Jeff Gordon kid. And I had just seen him on Thursday night, Thunder, in that midget, like ripping around there. He like runs over the second place guy, goes on two wheels down the front straightaway, almost flips over and wins the race. I was like, yeah, I got to see how good this kid is. So we meet in Charlotte, and there he is, full mullet. Okay, he's like 18 years old, full mullet. He weighs all of 100 pounds. He had like tried to grow a mustache. Oh yeah, and I open up my briefcase, and he opens up his briefcase. So I'm starting to make notes, and I look over, and his briefcase is a open wheel racing magazine, some Planters Peanuts, and a Nintendo Game Boy.
So it was all for show.
Yeah. I was like, okay. So we hit it off, and of course,
What are you at this moment?
Oh gosh, so that if he was 19, I would have been 33.
Okay.
So
you felt a little bit of an old man.
Oh my God, yeah, like this kid, is like,
he's a kid.
Yeah, he's just, let's see what he's going to do, and of course he can't rent a car, so his mother's with him. So the first thing we do, of course, is take his mother to Hooters. So we took the kid, took the mother to the Hooters. Next day we go to Charlotte Motor Speedway, and he gets out. He puts on this Diet Pepsi fire suit, and the legs all burned. And I was like, dude, what's up with that? Oh yeah, the other night I caught on fire in that midget, and I was like, what's going on here, right? So we put him in this. We had a Buck Baker school car, one motor, right? We borrowed a bunch of stuff. We used to call borrow it all racing is what we called it. So I put him in the car. I go on top of the truck, like the crew chief does, and I look down, and he's not moving. And then his arm comes out the window, and he's like waving to me. I go down there. I go, what's the matter? And he goes, so where do I start this? Didn't know how to start it. And then we're explaining, okay, the shifter, he'd only driven the shifter on the column. Yeah. So I said, okay, kind of same thing, but, right here. So he goes out and he makes a few laps, and it was okay, and he was a little bit lost. And I said, well, let's grab Chuck Bound, who is the reigning Busch Grand National champion. We'll put him in your car, make sure it's all right. We put Chuck Bound in, and he goes out and runs some laps. Hey, yeah, it's good. Kid's good to go. Talks to Jeff a little bit, and Jeff's listening. Jeff goes out. He runs like 3 laps, and all of a sudden he's running 0.2 of a second faster than Chuck Bound. And then all of a sudden he is just flying around the racetrack where I get hit. And he's not driven 10 laps yet. And he gets in the bumps at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and he just turns this thing sideways and then just straightens it out and goes on. And so I said on the radio, hey, you all right? He's like, yeah, are you? I said, why don't you come here and talk? So I said, look, dude, you can't do that with one of these cars. And he's just looking at me like, well, okay, And that day we ended up being second fastest to Davey Allison. So Hugh Connerty said, okay, I'm going to run you guys in some races. And that's where it started. We went back to Charlotte for the race, and qualifying got rained out, and we had to run the hooligan race, and he got crashed on like the first lap. So we stayed up for a couple of days straight, put a front clip and a rear clip, fixed the car, took it to Rockingham, and went there and sat on the outside pole. And people are like, who in the hell are these guys? We ended up crashing in the race and going back and fixing the car again, taking the same car to Martinsville. And we were in a qualified spot at Martinsville doing really good and blew the motor. And Ford came in at that time and said, hey, we're hiring that guy. And they hired Jeff, and I went back to New Jersey.
It was like over in a way.
Yeah, it was over. And I
lit the fuse.
And I went back to New Jersey. He went on to race the Ford dealers red, white, and blue car, and I went home to race my modified to try and I wanted to be a driver. I got hurt, and in '91 I had to make a decision. If I could make a living driving a race car, if I was just going to keep making those and they walked away videos, you know what I mean? So I actually went down to work for Alan Kulwicki, and in NASCAR land, because I just needed a job, and Jeff's guy at that time couldn't afford to pay me, so we went to work for Alan Kulwicki, and Alan and I got into a literal almost fist fight the day before the Daytona 500 because we were both very like-minded when it comes to things, and I quit, and I was walking out the garage area to go home to New Jersey with my tail between my legs, and I bumped into Preston Miller and Lee Morse from Ford. And they said, where are you going? I said, I'm going home. And they said, to the hotel? I said, no, New Jersey, I'm done. And they said, wait a minute, and they knew that Jeff and I had a good relationship. So they said, come back tomorrow, we want to talk to you. And the Ford people put me over at Bill Davis Racing and connected Jeff and I again, which was the second race of the season for 1992. We jumped in that Busch car and at Bill Davis Racing and got on a tear.
Really? What did he... Well, first, a few things come to mind. One is, I always believe that if you put yourself out there in the darkest moments, opportunity can present itself, right? If you're good, then you hope it connects. Because how many people actually did go home that day, metaphorically, and never touch it again? Drivers and crew chiefs, right? They just never got the chance. They stopped you, they gave you the opportunity, but if you like, all that background had led to you reuniting with Jeff, and I'm sure you'd evolved in that period. But how had he evolved when you saw him again? Because by now he's got some races under his belt. What was it like the first time you saw him back in the car? Like, shit, this kid's growing up.
Yeah, I had been watching him, and I knew he was good, and he sat on poles, and he was always quick. Hadn't won any races. He actually won Rookie of the Year, but still hadn't won races. And he just fast, but nobody to coach him, nobody to he needed that Harry Hogg talk. Yeah. You laugh about, but that's how I came to be a crew chief. Like, I learned to be a crew chief by watching Days of Thunder over and over again because Jeff Gordon was Cole Trickle, right? And at that point, I had to be Harry Hogg, like, look, son, you can't do it that way. So we had a lot of talks about how hard you could run that car into the corner and that it wouldn't react like that sprint car. It had as much power as that sprint car, but it was heavier and small tires and whatnot. And I hope this doesn't get us in trouble, and I know that's a podcast, but I used to say, Jeff, it's like taking a big girl to a dance. You can't be jitterbugging her around. You got to move her slowly. You can still be it's going to be a great dance, but you got to move her a little bit slowly. So we used to laugh about that. We talked about egg under the throttle. So it took me a while to get used to the Busch Grand National cars because I had never worked on one. So our first race together, we went, I think, to Rockingham, and we sat on the pole, but we missed the race setup, finished 8th, 9th, 10th. Then we went to Richmond, same thing, sat on the pole, but just quick, but we were struggling with the same things. And then we went and tested Atlanta so that I could really learn these Busch cars. And I changed a bunch of stuff in the front ends, and we did a bunch of different spring shock combinations at Atlanta, and we got going really quick. And it was very different from what they had been running. And Bill Davis, who owned those cars, he again supported me because, you always have those crew members go like, that ain't going to work. The hell, that guy's a modified guy. He don't know what he's doing. You know what I mean? So we went to Atlanta and sat on the pole and won the race. We beat Mark Martin, I think Dale Earnhardt, Dale Jarrett, a bunch of Cup guys. And Hendrick noticed Jeff right there. And that's when Rick started talking to him about coming over and driving at Hendrick Motorsports.
It started not started. That's where he picked up Rick. We'll get on to Rick in a minute, but you worked alongside this kid that became arguably one of the best in history in NASCAR. He represented the change, really, right? In drivers bringing, they were fitter and they had a different attitude and everything. And then, but something the fans don't see is that, and we know it from the inside, whether it's Leclerc or Max Verstappen or whoever, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, they're just young men growing at the same, almost their maturity is not keeping up with their track maturity, right? Because they're kids and suddenly they're famous and they're making a shitload of money. And Jeff went through some tough times, right? I mean, I only met his ex-wife one time, but I know that was like it must have been a massive happening. Were you around during that period?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to tell stories that I tell, but but I just was saying fans don't realize that their superstars have got lives, right? I mean, big lives.
And when it happens quick, that no matter how mature they are or how well they're supported, Jeff was always fortunate. Jeff was very mature inside the race car, like unbelievable. Like it was like throwing a switch. He'd be out listening to music, breakdancing on a piece of cardboard, and I'd call him to get in the car, and it'd go from watching a kid to watching strange change. Like he could tell you things, talk to you things, and then he'd get out and he'd be playing the Game Boy. I kid you not. At one point at some test, we carried like the cardboard thing, and he would be out there breakdancing, like spinning. I think he still does it, spinning around, doing all kind of crazy.
Look, center of gravity.
Oh yeah. I'm like, what is he doing out there? And then he'd be boom right in the car. And his mom and dad, John and Carol Bigford, super people. But fame, fortune, people. Then you get people in your ear. You break away. That I'll do this and that. And unfortunately, for him, he went through that. I'm not sure, what overall about his first marriage. The only thing I can say about that is honestly that Jeff Gordon is more like the Jeff Gordon that I know now than he was for I would say for several years. Yeah,
conception of it. Yeah,
he's Jeff Gordon is super talented, and he is by far one of the greatest race car drivers I've ever worked with as far as picking stuff about in the car. I've always told people, look, I'm not that great of a crew chief. If you couldn't make a car go for Jeff Gordon, you shouldn't be holding a wrench because he gives you so much. He makes it so easy to pinpoint what you've got to do, but as I said, he's really witty and he's funny. He has a lot more depth than that. And when we go, like we did that Porsche race a couple months ago, we had a friggin' blast because he's just funny as shit. Like he's funny.
I can see that his personality, I think, well, it's like a lot of athletes, famous people. The demands of the sport and
I don't have a wine sponsor. No, but
we need one.
If Camus is listening.
Yeah, exactly, please. Is I think almost when they retire, they can show the world their goofiness and their fun side. Because I feel sorry for some of the young drivers. They can't be James Hunt anymore.
Right.
I mean, shagging birds and driving fast. I mean, lucky them, because there was no social media. But now these guys have I don't know about you, but like I look at the pressure on some of these young kids now and I go, where they're karting from 5 years old, dad and mum are up to the neck in debt, and you think to yourself, where are you going with this? Because there's only a certain number of seats at the table.
Right.
It's not like a football where there's 1,000 people on the rosters around the country or more. There's, what are there, 25 in NASCAR, 30 in NASCAR, 36, and Formula 1, 20. And I mean, it's a tough sport to be a pro in.
And it's unfortunate evolution that we've got to stop somehow. And when I think about the sport, I'm a technical guy, right? I love that. But I like to build stuff. Right now, you build everything based on what the simulation says. You build everything based on what the computer says. The driver drives the car the way the computer says. The crew chief pits the car the way that the computer says the race is going. These all, And when we lose that personality, I think the stick and ball sports are still so popular because it's me against you.
Yeah.
You know, and it's they let those guys have their personality, and that's, you know, they can still create a great race. You don't have to all pass at the same point, right? Like Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, two completely different driving styles, two completely different setups. Jeff could be fast at one end, Dale would be fast on the other. It was a great race because Dale would pass him or bump him out of the way down there, and Jeff would pass him back. Same with Rusty. You know, great, but they were all so different, and to me, that created great racing. It created fan involvement because they weren't the same, and now with that evolution of, okay, here's the template for creating a race car driver, boom, 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 and by the time some of these young kids get there, they may be burned out, or they don't know that why they're doing it. You know why you did it. I know why I did it. Yeah. It was our passion. It was our love. We knew it. It was like, it wasn't something we had to do. Yeah. It was something we really wanted to do. And I hope that we don't lose that. You know, it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle, but you know, I hope that that racing doesn't get so much about pumping out the corporate and the marketing and things, which is, you know, we've got to have it obviously, but there's still got to be that sport. That's why I love going back to some of the short tracks and seeing some of those guys. You know, they're not. What did Rocky Balboa say? You know, he was when he was fighting in Philadelphia. He was in, but then he got too civilized. Like when he became the champion. You know, so I like to go back and run around the short tracks once in a while to feel that passion.
I think what you said about the business of racing became NASCAR, obviously, as a family, as a group, they found the magic sauce, which was right for then. Mm-hmm. You could see how everyone's struggling to make it relevant now in today's world. I mean, Formula One is the one that's just captured everyone's imagination in the most unlikely place. Mm-hmm. In America, I'm going to Austin to Formula One. I mean, 5 years ago, they were like, oh, good. Now it's like, I'm going to, you know, people on the street who we meet are excited about going to a Formula One race. 3 races in America, just off the back of one TV series.
Right.
You know, has created, and NASCAR are trying to do their version of it, and IMSA trying to do, it'll never work. None of those count. Because NASCAR's tried to do reality shows for 10 years, but
yeah,
they're little fan.
NASCAR wives didn't do really well.
No, exactly. and yet you wonder what is the, you know, they have that massive volume of people that want to watch NASCAR races like they watch football and stuff, but everyone's fighting the audience, the viewing figures. Yet when you go to a race, it's still spectacular.
Oh my God, live, it's great, you know, and it is great. You know, I think NASCAR struggles with the problem. Their demographic is, it's older, right?
Yeah.
Where I think IndyCar and Formula One specifically did an amazing job at all of their marketing and then targeting. Like they've targeted that group now that's cool about the technology. They marketed their stars. They let them have the personalities, and it got people interested. And I think IndyCar's doing a really good job at that right now. Yeah. You know, I'm obviously I'm a Mr. Penske fan, but I think Jay Fry and his group over there and the things that they're doing. When you go to an IndyCar race now, I know that their big events are the 500, and then they've got one coming up at Long Beach, which is amazing. Like Long Beach is amazing, you know, and they'll grow. But you look at that demographic; they're young and they're same kind of Formula One people because they've made it about the event. Yeah. It's a social event with stars, and they've made their drivers into celebrities. And I think from the NASCAR side, we need to get back to doing that. They've got some great young NASCAR guys that have a lot of talent, but a lot of personality, and they need to let them get it out.
I remember a young kid in Porsche did a Porsche driving selector thing a few years ago, and this good, talented driver being looked at by Porsche. That's what they were trying to find, you know, all these young guys and girls. And this one kid, he was fast, and he said, so I did a little bit of media training for them, and he said, what could you suggest? I said, you're fast. And he's like, yeah. And his dad's sitting there. I said, but you are maybe the most forgettable young man I've ever met. And he's like,
to the point.
Yeah. But I was like, because I said, you need to go away over the winter. And the dad, I said, excuse me, I apologize to the dad. I said, you need to, I don't know, come back with a funky haircut, get get a tattoo of something on your arm, date Instagram, hot models, something, so you can stand out, because in today's world, Raikkonen got away with it, by being monosyllabic, but maybe one of the fastest people ever to hit a gas pedal. And if you're not that good, you have to bring something else to them. You have to be a personality. And I feel that's what's missing, because the kids are they're not actually homogenous when you meet them individually. But when you look at them in the group, they have to be so corporate. They have to be the pressure, all the sim work. It's like the fun childhood part of being a young racing driver has been taken away a bit, I think, because of the pressures of it. Mm-hmm. Parents are invested. And I'm like, God, kids, you've got to, don't you just do it because you love it too,
I think we've gotten so politically correct, and I don't mean that just politics side. I mean, everyone's so afraid to make a mistake that they don't, you look at guys that, when NASCAR really started to crack down on guys like Tony Stewart. Tony's amazing, but Tony will lose his temper and create, he'll say things he doesn't want to say. You look at guys like Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch. Yeah. And NASCAR needs to let those guys
let them breathe a bit.
Because one of the biggest mistakes I think we ever made in NASCAR was letting Travis Pastrana out. Yeah. Should have done whatever. He and Scott Speed would have been perfect for NASCAR. Both guys did a great job. Too. He did a great job.
I mean, he's 11th or something, and and Travis just jumps in.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people in the country could do that? Like,
no.
Many.
No.
And also, his balls are the size. It looks like an African elephant.
Right.
It must do. Because anyone that's jumped backflips into the Grand Canyon.
In your underwear, right? In your underwear.
Or jumped out of planes with no parachute and caught up. I mean, no wonder it doesn't freak him out to go to Talladega, right? Because he's one of the bravest X Games guys ever.
And he's a good driver. He's got incredible car control. I mean, look what he's done at Pikes Peak and what he does in his own series. It's really, it's amazing. But that personality is what's made him.
Yeah, it really is. I know. I love watching him. But I gotta say, you say you as a crew chief, you just being around Jeff, you could, some people could have done it. But of course that's not true, because you helped mold him and you helped guide him. But what was the young Ray like as 18? When you're full of energy? I imagine you're a pretty high energy kid.
Yeah, but
but super smart.
For me, I didn't have what it took. I thought I was a good driver, and I'll just drive the shit out of this thing. It doesn't have to handle. I don't have to work on it. I hung out with my friends. I drank with my friends. I didn't work on the cars enough. I didn't take it serious enough, and a lot of that was just a product of where I was and the people that I was hanging out with. It was always some excuse about this or that. And as I started to get opportunities, I started to get around people, then realized, okay, I've got to work on this car. I've got to do this. I'm just not going to go and drive and beat people the higher you
had been a mechanic all the way. You'd worked on shit all the way through your teenage years.
Yeah, I had.
So you were mechanically very competent, obviously.
Not really, not really. I worked in a gas station, but I wasn't mechanically competent. I thought I was, but I wasn't, right? And then we started building cars, and honestly, my big break that changed my life a great bit, two things happened. I almost died in a fire at Martinsville Speedway, and incredible crash. And I had nothing, and I had a choice: quit or do it again. And it was really a strange time, because I got everything back together. But the new car I built, I worked and did whatever, and it was the first time I'd taken the initiative to look. If I don't do this for myself, I'm done. And then I realized I really do want to race. I don't really want to drink beer and sign autographs and hang out with my buddies. I want to race. And we put a car together, and we went back to the racetrack, and it was shit. Like, it drove like shit. And everybody's like, oh, he's scared because of the wreck. He doesn't have it. He never had it, whatever. And I'm like, no, it's just not right. And I crashed that car. And again, I was really down in the dumps. And for the first time in my life, I went and borrowed money to fix that car. And I took it to a friend of mine who was a really great chassis guy, and he was he was soon to be modified champion, the national modified champion, a guy named Jamie Tomato. And he puts the car in his jig, and he says, "Look, it's not right. The car was never right."
So you'd felt it,
and so he fixed that car that night, and we went out and won the next week, and people started looking at me different. And we came from the back. We won 3 or 4 races that year, almost won the championship on the last night. And they're like, oh, you've got it. And I walked away and went to work for Roger Penske because I thought to myself, I need to get to the next level, whether I'm going to drive or not. And when I went to the Penske organization and really worked under Jay Signori, who's an amazing man, that was when I said, oh, wow, I'm not even on the right track here. I lost 30 pounds. I started working out. I read and read and read. When I would get with one of our IROC drivers, including your dad, I would wear those poor bastards out with questions where they finally would be like, hey, I got to go back to the hotel here, kid. But just, and then I realized.
You became a student.
I did. I did, and realized that those drivers are there for a reason. They've all got some special philosophy, some special thought process. It's not a magic gift from God. It's whatever. It's and some of them are talented from God, but most of those guys worked really hard on their craft.
When I'm listening to you and I'm going, and this is something that's in this show. This isn't about me, but it makes you think. Like, if you were interviewing me at this point, I would be saying, I'd be getting a bit insight, in depth in my own thoughts. Hey, have that water. Is that, yes, my dad was a racing driver, but Dad was racing, and he's also one of those very natural guys. He's like, John Mack, do you want to help opening a bottle of water?
Oh, no.
He works out a lot.
There we go.
And so Dad was doing his thing, but I had the speed, and but I didn't have the attitude, and I know exactly, you're talking exactly, I feel what you were, the moment you were at, because I needed in my life someone like that, in my racing life. I was talking with Jensen Button when I did this podcast, his karting was obviously sensational, but there came a moment, they had to put him with someone who went, hey kid, this is what you need to do to become the best. And I think everybody, if you're fortunate to get to the top, has to have that intersection with someone that really can take you to being the mature version of yourself you are. Like, just open your mind to it. So Jay did that for you, really.
Jay and the drivers, when I just realized that, like, they weren't just, hey, screwing around. Like, look, this great life that people see. Hey, it's like you show up, it's like watching an actor. You see the show, but you don't see all of the work and the script and the practice. I realized that, there was a philosophy about those guys, how they dug down. I mean, just talking to Mario Andretti and people like that about the surface for most people's here, and they dig down and dig down and dig down, and they're so far into what's going on. And at that time, as I said, I was very naive because I had decent opportunities at the short track stuff, and I did okay. But I realized then, if I want to go with these guys, I've got to change my whole mindset. And what was good, because it changed my mindset, but it also told me that I didn't have that kind of talent.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I was really capable of the car. Like, I could take what they were telling me and make the car go.
So you spoke the same language. You just needed with a different accent.
I always tell everybody, look, if it wasn't for lack of one thing, I'd be sitting right where Jeff Gordon is sitting today. The talent.
But that's what's fantastic about this story is you had all those raw qualities, and you could have been a great driver if you just. But the point is, it maybe wasn't your destiny, right? Yeah. And to turn it into being a crew chief took all that same passion, and the fact, I think this is so important, what it's like when a driver goes, it's just doing this, I can't quite tell you, but on the exit, you go, I feel it, right? You must have been sitting there going, I feel it in my own same way.
Like I would say to Jeff, okay, or I would say to you, if you said, I'm not, okay, let's talk about that. Where are you in the corner? Where's your feet? Are you on the brake or are you on the gas? Did the steering wheel go light or did it get heavy? Did your head move up? Did it move forward? Did it, and then he'd stop and think about those things. And I always felt, from the day I met Jeff, there was something that clicked, because I felt like, now I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what I'm supposed to do. Like, here's this great talent. It's my responsibility to help him now. Yeah. And I felt that way, until the day I left Hendrick, and we had won. He won all that stuff. Yeah, and that I just felt like that was my responsibility, and it was, to take what I knew, and this guy could do it. And his stepdad, John Bickford, did all that, and then realized, look, I can't take this kid to the next level. And John will tell you, well, I handed him off to Ray, but he did. He didn't really know that Ray was coming, but after he met me, and he was like, and that feeling of knowing that for whatever small part I had in doing that at that time, I really felt like I helped Jeff until the day he didn't need that anymore. I always tell him, because we won 47 races together, and then over the next, and we did that in about 7 years, and then it took him 17 more to win 46. And I always kid him. I say, hey, you didn't win as many without me as you did with me. And
so what was it like when you were, when you were walking in, becoming known in the NASCAR paddock? You're with a kid who didn't fit their mold, right? And you don't really fit them.
Oh,
so what was that? I mean, I'm gonna say it's like white boy racism to white boys. So what was it like in there? Because there is nowhere more at that point, 20 odd years ago. I'm trying to
30 years ago.
30 years the politically wait. There was nothing more insular than NASCAR at that time.
It was we with the Busch car one time, we got into a little brawl down in
the fact you say brawl, no one in IMSA or Formula One IndyCar has ever used those words.
No
one has brawls.
We had a brawl because one night I was pretty accepted by the Baby Ruth crew as the Yankee, the Northern. I was from New Jersey, so my Jersey accent was probably pretty strong, and we were in a bar in Georgia, down by Road Atlanta. There's a little short track across there. I'm trying to think of the name of the place, but we were in a bar down, and I said, hey, well, you guys want a drink? And it was like the jukebox stopped,
the pianist stopped.
Yeah, everyone was like, and then these guys at another table started, razzing us like, "You's got whatever."
It's like Django Unchained when the black guy walks in the bar, the music stops.
Yeah, that's what I felt like. And then so the one guy that was running his mouth there, he had like a handlebar mustache. So we had a guy on the Baby Ruth crew. He was not very big, but he was pretty tough. He walks up, he walks over to that guy, and the guy, he's like, "Hey, look, calm down," or whatever. And he reaches over and he takes the guy's handlebar mustache and gives it a twist. No. And I was like, that's when I knew it was on. Yeah, it was on right there. So we didn't go to jail, but we did have a talk with the police that night. And it was kind of like what was that movie, The Replacements, where they all get beat up?
Yeah.
The next day, we were like, Bill Davis, who owns the team, was looking at us like, but we really bonded after that and sat on a bunch of poles and won some races. But think about having to race Dale Earnhardt, cowboy boots, big buckle, tough guy, black car. Rusty Wallace, tough, black car. Davey Allison, tough, black car, big, belt buckles. Like Ricky Rudd punched you in the eye in a heartbeat, right? Yeah. Oh my, yeah. He's real nice around here, but Ricky's tough. Ricky was tough, right? We show up, our guys wearing Nikes. We have a rainbow painted car and a crew chief from New Jersey.
You couldn't have been. You might as well have had. He was like the first night in jail, and you drove the soap.
Yeah, and it was on. And Jeff was, he would screw with those guys. I would tell, he'd go and practice and just screw with them. And I'd say, Jeff, you don't poke the rattlesnake, man. We can't. And he'd be like, I'm not afraid of them guys. He would just like do dive bomb, slide jobs sideways in front of Earnhardt and stuff like that. And Earnhardt would come. Earnhardt grabbed me one day. He goes, "You need to tighten that kid up." And I was like, he goes, "He went past me sideways." And I said, "Well, he passed you, didn't he?" Yeah. So, but I always had a good relationship with Earnhardt, but I was scared to death of him. I mean, those guys were.
But they came from an era. I mean, not long after almost the booze prohibition running. Junior Johnson, they were his babies, right? I mean, these guys were tough.
And the way they handled that, like there was not the social media and the network camera. Yeah. There's been quite a few drivers knocked on their ass in the garage after the races. I promise you, I've seen it.
Yeah.
And that was the way they handled that, and then everything was okay. Yeah. But I've seen a couple guys, and again, unfortunately, our guy's 5 foot tall, and he's
like the terrier up at the front. You're like,
we used to call him Scrappy Doo. He would go and pick on the biggest guys in the garage. Like one time, this guy Steve Grissom, Alabama football player, and Jeff's over there in Wrexham. I was like, dude, you are going to have to start wrecking smaller people. Like, go pick on Ward Burton or something, because we are going to get beat up bad here. And then he gets into it with Dale Jarrett, and Dale Jarrett is like ready to, and Jeff's like, I was like, yeah, I had to pull him out of there before,
And you're just the biggest guy to take it on, right? I hope you had some big mechanics.
We hired the biggest pit crew guys, and everybody thought it was to pit the car. It was to keep us from getting our ass beat.
I very quickly, I tried to do one. I just wanted to get into Busch. I did, and then somehow I got a call on the Monday. Watkins Glen, come and jump in a car. I went there. This was the team. It was a disaster. I should never have done it. But I am desperate to. My sports car's in a weird place. I thought, the British guy, now's my time. Anyway, get there. The team, I can't even remember the name of it. Wouldn't want to. They pissed them. It was one of those journeyman kind of teams. Pissed them off at the last road race. So Tech were already pissed off with them. In that first practice session, I've never even sat in the car, driven it. Never driven one of them at all. Coming from the Corvettes and, things like that I've been racing, they go and say to me, so I'm sitting in the car in Tech, and then they're holding me with until 15 minutes to go.
Oh, because they
They can just do it. Yeah. They're just standing
because
there
they did something. Yeah, they did something. And
so I'm getting back. So you know how they just held cars? So I go out, and I'd never worked with a spotter before. My spotter was obviously taking a leak. And I'm going up to the S's. I mean, these cars...
Oh, yeah.
When you've never driven one, and older generation, obviously it's 15 years ago.
Big girl at the dance. Big girl at the dance.
I just need it. But no one was, I just got in it. And I've always been really good straight away, but not when they've been out there for an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Fucking hammering around. I'm going up to the S's on my second lap, and I'm just building up some speed, but not fast enough. I'm trying to keep out of the way, which is, it doesn't work. You've got to go.
No, they're all over.
But they're all over. Yeah. And I see this car coming up behind me, and then it disappears. And I'm going, oh, fuck, where did that go? I hope it wasn't Dale Jr., someone really famous. Anyway, next thing is red flag. And then I see the wreck happening behind me. It was not Chase Elliott. I've forgotten who it was. Anyway, I come back in the pit, like driving, trying to get to my garage so no one sees me. Next thing, the crew chief's trying to pull me out of the car, through the window by my helmet. And I'm going, not my crew chief, his crew chief. And Elliott Sadler. And I wrecked him, but he didn't touch me. I just was in the wrong place. They were going so much faster, and I'm like, it's almost like this isn't Kansas anymore. Yeah. I mean, I'd never been. Threatened to be punched down.
You can't. That you just weren't given a fair opportunity.
Jeff came up to me, and he said, he said, I couldn't do this in your sport.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. So you shouldn't be here. Like it was. I was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
It was a good job, but I wish I had tested. I wish because
it's as much as I want to drive an Indy car. Like if they said, "Hey, go out to Indy right now," probably not a good thing.
Probably not.
No.
But there's a moment that you make bad decisions because you're desperate to get in.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
It made me.
And that's a whole nother podcast.
A whole nother
about the bad.
But I saw this. In a way, it was enlightening to me because I realized that despite the TV and the big sponsors, at its heart, these are short track drivers going to the same toughness that they had when they started out at 16 or 18. Despite the glamour, they were as tough as fucking nails,
right?
And it was like that rawness to it. But all racing's like that. If you're in the Formula One garages, you see old mechanics. They're just working on cars, having a good time, working hard, trying to win. But the outside appearance of it is very polished. But I realized very quickly NASCAR wasn't polished under the surface.
Yeah,
that was
they're changing it now. But again, I don't want to see I don't like to see people out there brawling all the time. But you still got to see that emotion. What good is sport without emotion, right? Because if without emotion you question how much desire, right, or commitment. But you make that commitment. We've been, there's been times, again when I was younger, I've mellowed a bunch. But you look at the ESPN highlights. We had a bench clearing brawl with Tony Stewart's team one time, and I'm threatening to whip Tony's ass, and like now we're like best buddies.
Yeah.
Rusty Wallace and I got into we were rolling around on pit road one time, but that could just so passionate. Yeah, you're like, you wrecked him, whatever, and it's, but that's the sport, and the sport needs
a bit. I'll tell you my way of looking at it is like I always laugh when maybe the wrong word, but pisses me off when they'll issue fines. You drivers did that. You shouldn't have punched. You shouldn't have gotten a screaming match. You shouldn't have hit each other on the slowdown lap. And they fine them, and then they use it in their highlight reel.
Yeah.
And I'm going, no, that's bullshit, because you're using it to market, because everyone loves competition, right? When the football players, suddenly there's 50 guys like fighting on the field. Terrible behavior, but we all kind of like,
you're like, hey, but it shows that emotion. That's what was good about the short track that I used to race at Wall Stadium back in the old days. I got into a fight and in the pits, right? So we crashed, and we were fighting with these people in the pits, and we got thrown out for that night and the following week. So the guy that was in charge of the pits there, I got along really good with him, and I was like, Tom, what the hell? What, 2 weeks? Like, I'm thrown out for 2 weeks. He said, next time you fight on the track and you only get thrown out for the night. You fight in the pits where the fans can't see you, you're out for 2 weeks. Really? I never forgot that. And so the next time I got mad at somebody, I just stopped my car and tried to get them, but didn't work.
You being on the scene with those legends, and especially Dale Sr., a bit like anyone that worked in Formula One or drove in Formula One with Ayrton Senna. It's like there are people that surpassed everybody else in terms of just resonating with the fan base. Was he good to other drivers? What was it like to see him operate? Was he, because Intimidator was intimidating. What was the softer side to him?
The softer side was probably not the other drivers, because he did what he could to win. I don't think he was dirty, but he would use you up, and that's just the way he was. And if you bumped him, bump you back. The softer side of him are things that people never will know about. The tons of people that he's helped out in his local area, and the things he's done did for Mooresville, North Carolina, and the money he's given to people who needed it, people who were sick or injured, or that he flew on his plane. There's so many Dale Earnhardt stories that people don't know about, that off the racetrack he did so much for so many people, and I think his he didn't seem to have a soft side for anybody. Ask Dale Jr. Because he beat Dale Jr. by a few inches in the IROC race, and I think Dale Jr. had to go to therapy for it. It was one of those deals like, Dad, really? But he said, I couldn't let you in, but he was just, he was larger than life. He was very John Wayne-esque to many of us. When he died, I said that NASCAR was never going to be the same. And maybe it's not, but it was never going to be the same for me, because racing Dale Earnhardt drove me and Jeff and our team to be better. Like he because of him, we knew we didn't care about another car on the racetrack for a long time. I knew if we could beat that 3, we could beat everybody else. And
he was the yardstick.
He was what we were shooting at. And like Senna and like people like that, those guys are good. Everybody knows they're good, but they don't know how good. But every time, and I know you know what I'm talking about, like that. There's a time during a race, or there's an incident. There's a time when you absolutely have to step up where your level is and where it's always been, and those freaking guys could do it. Earnhardt could do it. Jeff could do it. Rusty could do it. They'd like all of a sudden, when you think they just pull some superhuman thing out for that part of that race that's critical, and they got it done, and boom, they move forward. Where there's many other guys that were really good guys, and they'd hit that thing during a race, and they couldn't get there, and the race would go much different for them.
Do you think, that is it? A great driver in a great car should win when things are tough. That's when you see those guys like Lewis in Formula One. He gets results in that car, the Mercedes, that shouldn't happen sometimes. The car's not great that day. Is that when you look at like a Jeff in a moment, you go, we shouldn't have won today, or we shouldn't have got the third, but because of him.
We've had that conversation, because he said, "Oh, Ray gave me a great car." And I said, "Yep, I did. I gave him great cars. I gave him winning cars, probably 20 times. We won 47 races together. There were days that he won us a race with a 5th place car. Just because he could, that he would just somehow step up after 475 miles. We'd do the last pit stop, and it'd be like, all right, don't talk to me on the radio. We used to kid around because he used to have feathers on his helmet for the Rainbow Warriors. And we always knew, like if you could see those feathers, like if he had his head up against the window net digging, look out, there was about to be an ass whooping. Yeah. And he'd somehow figure out how to get that car to the front.
Do you look back and go, I mean, you have made a great living doing what you did from a point where you almost gave it up, right? You have a lovely car collection. You've had TV shows. You've achieved probably more than you thought you ever would. I'm sure as you look back, yeah, it would have been good to have a helmet on, but outside the car, as good as it could go really without being a Roger Penske or someone like that, you'd never have known that your future could have evolved, because I don't think at that point the future was even there to get into TV and stuff. Do you, as you reflect, I mean, you're not much older than me, but you reflect back and you just go, what a crazy thing, driving around in circles, getting paid to help someone drive around in circles has led to the lifestyle that you have now. It was unexpected, I'm sure. You didn't know you could achieve a, financial situation and all these beautiful cars. What I'm trying to say is, who would have thought, as the 18-year-old version of you, that your life would have unfolded like?
Oh, I can tell you, nobody that I know.
Yeah.
That I would have been most likely to be working at the Texaco station for the rest of my life. That is one of those things, and I tell people, you can look at it a couple ways. I always look at myself as the Forrest Gump of motorsports. I have no idea, because I saw opportunities and I wanted to keep going and do it. And I've met great people. And when a door opened up, I wasn't afraid to make a change. I have a saying that says, look, I don't know, just hand me the stuff and I'll jump out of the airplane. Sometimes you just got to build a parachute on the way down, right? And I've been really fortunate, really blessed. And I think that's why you don't get to write your own history. That's why you don't get to write your own fate, because you may not, you may screw it up, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to do this, I want to do that, but, I wouldn't trade my life as it is for anything. Everybody says, do you have regrets? Yeah. I regret not putting an extra gallon of gas in the Charlotte car when we ran out on the last lap. That of all the races we won, I'm still pissed off over losing that race because it was my fault. Right? That one was on me. I let everybody down. And, I feel pretty good because when I look back and say, okay, that was the only time I can really say I let us down, right? But, I honestly don't know. When I look at the people that I know now and the things that I've been able to do, and if I get run over by a bus tomorrow, there better be a damn big party, because my life has been amazing, full.
I think that's a pretty good time to end it. That's what it should be, right? It's
day in my life. Day in my life.
You know what? I think what I'm excited about, we can do another one of these in 10 years.
Yeah,
it's going to be, who knows, right?
Put it on the date, yeah.
We need a TV show together. I do think we do.
We do.
I don't know what it's about, but it's like a Brit and an American walk into a bar.
Right.
And the rest goes weird.
Yeah, but there's enough people that would, some kind of automobile content, whether we're telling stories or something, but I've always thought about that. We would have so much fun together, but I just don't know.
I don't know what the show is, but
be.
It's like, I think there's a fascination right now with people. I think it's a direct result of this commercialization and the social media impression of all the sport and the cars we love, but behind it are still all these really true great people and the crazy stories. Drivers are still misbehaving, by the way, fans. Yeah. You think that there's still there's still a lot of fun being had up and down the paddock. Seeing more women in the sport, thank God. You know what I mean? Erin, your wife. I mean, look at her. I mean, she's fantastic. I think there's so much more to be written in our sport, but I think the fans, and this is where TV get it wrong. The TV think it's got to be so, blue blazers with gold buttons standing there. I'm like, and don't swear and don't do this. And I'm like, that's not the world we live in. Right. The world we live in is it's chaos, man. So I think we're only civilized on the surface. Underneath, and underneath, that's why podcasts do well. That's why all these shows where it's unfiltered, that's what people want. You know, they want to know what you and I think about what's really going on.
And I'd love to do something, but I just don't know what it is. But between the two of us, like, we know so many people. So what could we do that's interesting? You know,
We'll come up with it.
You know,
Stay tuned.
if we could get a sponsor that would let us use these cars, we could go and go, okay, look, back in 1960 something, this guy did this speed in this car at this track. Okay, you're gonna drive it. I'm gonna work on it. Let's see if we can do it. You know,
Really,
we'll wreck a lot of old cars, but it'd be a good show.
they're at sale at auction right now. Anyway, cheers. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ray. That was great, man.
Well, thank you very much for listening or watching Life with Legends. I love doing it. And so don't forget to share the podcast to your friends if you did enjoy it. And thank you so much for your support. Also, remember, visit lifewithlegends.com to catch up on past episodes and check out what I think are some beautiful portraits I've taken of all my guests. Available for sale in limited edition prints. Anyway, guys, thanks so much. I look forward to you joining me again next week.